It was a Sunday. There's an event in Seattle known as Sea Fair. It's a huge thing around town. Downtown Seattle becomes just absolutely abysmal because we have hydroplane races on the lake. There's huge events. There's parades. There's huge events in downtown. There's the Sea Fair Pirates. There's the Sea Fair. There's so many Sea Fair things. And it's one of those things where you just, if you're smart, you want to avoid it. But it's all the rage. And I have this friend who back in the day, he was one of those guys that liked to be edgy. I wouldn't go so far as to say he was an edgelord. He didn't go that far. But he liked to be the funny, wacky friend. And on this particular Sunday, I got a phone call from him. For he, too, wished to avoid Sea Fair. And he called me, and it was, Caliban, we're getting a group together. All right, and what are we going to do? Deuce. His nickname was Deuce, and I have no problem calling him Deuce. He doesn't actually like that. He says, "Oh, those days are behind me." He matured out of the Deuce. But for the purposes of this story, the nickname will work well for us. We're getting a group together. Now, these were group people I would role play, so it's like we're getting an impromptu game. No, we're going to a strip club. Odd. But I'm not really doing anything. Sure, why not? So he tells me what strip club to go meet him at. Now, I'm not what you would call a regular patron. So he had to give me directions. But I knew enough. We'll get into the rules of going to a strip club later, because there are rules. So I, of course, had to stop by a cash machine. Because you got to bring money. And knowing what story we're getting to, you know where it's coming, but we're going to go there anyway. So I meet him, and it's first off, it's a mixed party. Not 100% even. No, it was 100. 3 men, 3 women. Interestingly, one of the women was a friend of mine, who is also part of the Disneyland story. The friend who went with my sister, my brother-in-law, and I to the infamous Disneyland trip, same woman. And then there was a bandmate of Dave's. He was in a band. I just said his name. Deuce. Whatever, Dave's a common name, and he knows what he did. Anyway, it was Deuce's, the drummer of Deuce's band, and her boyfriend. And then another lady friend. So we get into the club. Now, I should have known the night was going to be odd when we entered the club. This, by the way, was an infamous club I later learned, called Rick's in Seattle. How infamous? RICO charges eventually happened. So we get in there. Now, what we should have heard was, "Welcome to Rick's. Have a good time." RICO charges. You spelled it correctly. Just go ahead and look it up, Straw Hat. It'll be an education and horrifying at the same time. What we should have heard is, "Welcome to Rick's." Should have almost been like the opening of Casablanca, really. But that's not what we heard. No, what we heard was, "Hey, Deuce, how's it going?" The doorman knows you. Get in further. "Oh, hey, Deuce, how's your band?" This was from a waitress. Another person asked about how Deuce's job was going. "Yes." And he said, "Do you think I come here too much?" And I, without pause, "Yes." They shouldn't know that much intimate details of your life. You're doing it wrong. So we go and we sit down. Now, how bad is it? I mean, it's about what you would expect. It's really skeezy. It's in the state of Washington, which already has weird... Strip clubs don't do well because there's odd blue laws on the books. But still, again, remember this was a place with RICO charges? There was also other charges that you would assume going hand in hand with RICO at a strip club. And it was sort of an odd evening. And we were there for about 20 minutes, and I was like, this probably won't be a long night, because outside of Deuce, none of the rest of us are really very comfortable. But we're trying to make the best of it and just having it as a group night. And then it happened. We were sitting there, watching the young lady on stage, when all of a sudden, Deuce is pounding his fist on my leg. Caliban, 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 Caliban! What? Look at the door! I look at the door. And then it began. Clowns. There were, by my count, about a dozen of them. And I'm convinced they all came in the same car. And then they all just spread out across the club. They don't sit together as a group. No, they spread out throughout the club. Clowns everywhere you look. And this is when I learned things man was not meant to know. And I'm saying that as a mad scientist. You know what the first thing I learned? Lap dancers like clowns. Oh, the clowns got all the attention. All the attention. I also learned that you can make many different and very creative shapes with balloon animals. Some of the balloon... Oh, yes. Just let your imaginations run wild. And there were clowns with 2 girls each. There was this one clown. There was a honking sound. It was rhythmic, like to the rhythm of the music. We could see his hands. They were empty. I want to believe they were the horn was in his shoe and he was doing it for effect. I want to believe that for the sake of my sanity. So this goes on. Now, earlier I'd been thinking about leaving because I wasn't having a good time. Because it was just kind of there. And then I couldn't. Now, the drummer and her boyfriend, the drummer is a good friend of mine, by the way. Still to this day, a very good friend of mine. We, every once in a while, reminisce about this story as survivors of a military incursion will sometimes reminisce. She and her boyfriend were the smart ones. They got, you know what, we're heading out. We'll see you all later. They got up and left. I wish I had that strength. But no, you know, it was like if there's a train wreck and you know you should look away, but you can't. I was stuck for the next hour, and yeah, we had to buy drinks periodically to stay, but I think even the people at the club knew, well, this is special circumstance. What can you do? This went on for 1 hour. 1 hour at the strip club with the clowns. At the end of that hour, one of the clowns stood up and blew a whistle. And all of the clowns immediately stood up and marched out of the club. Once we were sure they were good and gone, well, that's when I was finally like, you know what? Nothing's going to top this. It's pretty much the end of the evening. Heading home. Got up and left. Now, I later learned from an acquaintance when I was sharing the story. Oh, somebody who had worked at a strip club shed some light. Because remember I said it was Seafair weekend. Well, one of the groups that participates in Seafair are the Seafair Clowns. And apparently, it is a tradition amongst the Seafair Clowns to visit every strip club in the greater Seattle area on Seafair Sunday for 1 hour. And we just happened to be there during the hour they were at Rick's. Lucky me. I don't know if that tradition still goes on, but it was like a pub crawl. Yes, Straw Hat, only replace pub with lap dance.